I mean, one other big issue is obviously Tim starting Nicky. I'm sure you'll be fully aware of that and involved. Can you give us any insight into that about the news that circulated with Moyes and Stein falling out? Because that seems to be another problem as well that's been going on behind the scenes at the club.
I'm not sure whether it's right. Because I remember similar stories coming out in the summer, and they look very tight. So I'll take them stories with a pinch of salt. I've got no insight. I mean, I haven't even tried to find out, to be honest with you, because when the same stories come out in the summer that there was at loggerheads over signings, and that's why we took so long to get the players in. After a couple of games, they was on the touchline cuddling each other. So I can only take that as a pinch of salt that they fell out. But I think Tim's, if I'm honest, I think Tim wants to start a project from afresh with a new manager. I think he's got the players that he wants to bring in, and I think that he's finding it a little bit, a little bit. What's the word I could use? Stifling. That the manager's still not been decided on. He does have a certain type of player that he likes to bring in, and I don't think that's the same sort of player that Tim Stein likes to look at. I think he might be looking at that with the thought of, if the club don't make a decision, or they make a decision to go that way, maybe it's time for me to go another way. I know that there's rumours about Liverpool possibly sniffing around him. That's a project that you'd want to be involved in, Liverpool. You know what I mean? Like, look, the owners. I think everyone's got a problem with the owners to some extent, but it's a bigger and more expansive project than West Ham. So I trust the guy. He doesn't seem like he's got a lot wrong. And he's the one that instilled Alonso. He's the one that at Leverkusen. He's the one that signed sort of Kudus and Alvarez from Ajax. He hasn't got a lot wrong so far. So yeah, listen, I'd like to keep him and see what he can do.
Where does Mark Noble sit, Nicky? Where does he sit in all this? Because obviously, like with a manager, David Moyes is an old school manager, isn't he? And you look at the transfers, I don't suspect David Moyes is the type of manager that's quite happy if he's given players. Like Steve Cooper at Nottingham Forest, he's just given a shed load of players and said, "Coach players." You think that Moyes wants an input onto the players he's getting?
I think he does, but I also think that he's sort of overridden sometimes because of the type of player he does want. He doesn't want to sign to the forward. I mean, it's crazy. It's absolutely mad that you've got. And this is no knock to Mikel, by the way, because I think Mikel's been, Premier League era. I think he's been one of our most shrewd signings in terms of what we paid for him and what he's done for the club. But he's 34 years old now. He struggles in natural goal scoring positions, and he's the one that you want to play centre forward. When you look at the players he's let go for half the money that they paid for, Sebastian Haller, look what he's gone on to do in his career. He's playing for Borussia Dortmund, just scored a winner in an international final. Skamaka, look, I haven't really followed Skamaka, but he was at a decent age, in his mid-20s. I thought he looked very good on the ball. I think there's things that Premier League clubs could have done with him. And I spoke to an ex-player last summer who played with him before last summer, and said he was the best player in training. And he was absolute quality, and he can't see why he can't get games. So yeah, I think that, of course, he's going to want to pick his own players, but I think he's got to a point now where you're thinking, right, hold on a minute, can we keep on spending money on these people, these players at an age that they are, and letting the players that come in that we give to him that go for our price? There has to be I think there has to be a decision made whether you're going to keep on doing that and following that model, spending the money for the short term, or get rid of Moyes and go a different direction.
Well, if you get rid of Moyes, Nicky, what's the plan? I mean, names mentioned: Potter, Lopetegui, Cooper. Would you think they're an upgrade, or actually are you concerned about some of those names?
I don't think I'm concerned. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I haven't got a name on the tip of my tongue. I'll be honest with you right now. But then again, I'll argue that's not my job. That's not my job to have a name at the tip of my tongue. I'm not the one looking at managers and looking at the best fit. There's so much that goes into joining a football club. It's not just the fact that you click your fingers and someone comes running. You know, there's got to be fits, there's got to be family situations, there's got to be, you know, an understanding that, you know, between the boardroom and the managerial side, the way it's going to run. So it's not as easy as that. I like Potter. You know, do you know what? The one I would have said before this, and I know that his Spurs tenure wasn't great, but I would have said Nuno. Nuno would have been a good fit because he plays that sort of that style of football. And when you see what he's instilled in Forest in such a small amount of time, you know, when we was going there last Saturday, I said it's never going to be an easy place to go to because they was playing decent football. I think they was just coming up against the wrong position, and he's instilled that sort of attacking sort of style into Forest, and they looked decent. They looked a decent side. They looked a decent side that, you know, although they you know, I thought they were solid at the back. I think that I think it's Muniel. I think he's superb. But, you know, the likes of Alanga and Hudson-Odoi were coming forward, and they was free flowing, and they was playing some decent football. They just need to learn to finish. But yeah, I thought he would have been a good fit. But I know Potter's name's, you know, his stock's not as high as it was, but I would take him. I would take Graham Potter. And just see what someone else can do. I don't think you should be sort of too worried about who takes over, but we need to see some sort of different football, you know, and as long as they can get us playing progressive football and winning, then, you know, I don't really know. I've heard Thomas Tuchel's name mentioned lately as well.
Well, Jurgen Klopp might be on that list soon as well, actually. But in terms of the aims for the season, Nicky, obviously next round of the Europa League, 9th in the table, you're 8 points off 6th. What would you say, regardless whether Moyes is there or not, what is a successful season for you now? Is it progressing in the Europa League? Is it aiming for a top 7 finish? What would, in your eyes, what would be a success after this year?
I still think a top 7. I still think the top 7 finish is what we should be aiming for, really. Maybe 8. I'll even take 8th at the minute, you know. Europa League's going to be very difficult because of the teams that are in it, you know. I think we'll do very well against the continental teams like we have, but it will be a Brighton or a Liverpool that stifle us. You know, the ones that come from home, I think will beat us quite comfortably. But yeah, I think just I'm going to say 7th because we will get back into some sort of European competition, and I think that's what you've got to be aiming for at this point.
Paul, what are your thoughts? Top 7 finish success?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, in the time that Moyes has been there, in the 4 years, you would look back, and I don't think there's any West Ham fan that will argue against you that he's not done a good job. And I think it's just got to a point where they've reached a ceiling. And do they want to push on through that ceiling with David Moyes, or do they want to push on through that ceiling with a different manager and a different style? And I think that the key is for the next appointment for West Ham, there's a huge stigma with West Ham, more so than a lot of other clubs, about the way that they play and about the way that they want to play. You know, you see the way that they play when they're at the bottom of the league and they're struggling defensively. David Moyes has set up this season and hugely defensive. I think, was it Bournemouth at home when it was a 0-0 game? Probably one of the worst games that I've watched this season, when it was an opportunity for West Ham to push on again. And I think it's just the style of football. I mean, like I say, there's no West Ham fan will argue that David Moyes hasn't done a good job. I mean, champions of Europe, they still sing that this season, and they've got the trophy in the cabinet. So they've gone from a relegation-threatened team to winning a European trophy, competing in Europa League now, going deep into the competition, while still sat 9th in the Premier League with a chance of another European place, which I think is about where West Ham are with their budget. But it's just a different way of playing, and it's just a different, can we just get that little bit more? And I think that the longer it goes, I think the writing is on the wall for David Moyes, but I think the respect that he will take with him, I think if he stays any longer, it could be a Roy Hodgson situation. You know, 1 season too many, just that little bit too far. Done a fantastic job. Let's all go our separate ways now. And I think for me, for West Ham, absolutely, another European finish, 7th, would be success, stability, competing in Europe, qualifying for Europe, and winning football matches. But it's the way they win football matches. And like I say, the next appointment's key, whether it's Potter, Steve Cooper, those type of names. For me, you look at them and you go, they might do a good job, could do a good job. The one for me that stands out is Lopetegui. If you can get somebody like Lopetegui in a similar vein as Emery, then all of a sudden as a West Ham fan, you go, right, okay, we've got a manager who's got a proper CV, we're going to play a proper style of football, and we're going to have a go at this. And then that somebody like that would signify real change for me.
You've just watched a segment from Football Insider's brand new podcast, The Inside Track, with me, Lewis Pearce, alongside the guests on the show. Thanks very much for tuning in. Please do give the video a like, comment your thoughts on the topic, and feel free to share on your social media pages. If you want to listen to the full podcast episode, click the link in the description below. Keep your eyes peeled for plenty more content and exclusives here on The Inside Track.